So a perfect gaming thumbnail actually starts with a good title idea. That's why you of course always hear work on a title and a thumbnail before the actual video from like a ton of YouTube creators. Because honestly, it's true. So if you are the video creator or the thumbnail artist, be sure to either help the creator or yourself think about either the moment, the theme, or the challenge from the video that it was centered around, okay? That'll just make your life 10 times easier. So a thumbnail, in my opinion, is always broken down into 4 simple basic elements: a background, a photo, text, and supporting assets. Each of these having full control on whether or not your thumbnail has a theme. Something that many YouTubers don't really necessarily have to think about in the early stages, but something to consider when your job is to get people to click on a video consistently from that channel. So in other words, branding. Photos can be in a specific spot every single time, or maybe the backgrounds have a specific gradient, color, or a pattern there. And maybe the text itself has a similar text effect each time. All these things can be fine-tuned and consistent inside of the thumbnail to say, you know, when I see this specific photo or the background or the text, I know I'm clicking on my favorite YouTuber's video, which is probably why you ask yourself once or twice in your life about why a specific YouTuber's thumbnails probably look really bad to you. It's probably just branding at that point, or they're lazy, who knows? So now that we have a nice little crash course on branding your own thumbnails, let's go and also create our own thumbnail right now. And I'll just basically go through the base of what it should look like and most likely what it's gonna be 99% of the time. Outside, of course, like the manipulation and variations of the thumbnail per title, right? Do not forget to check out the Everything Pack. If you guys do not know what it is, all 28 of my custom-made products that you get on that one purchase, plus all future products free. So to, of course, start this thing up, we are inside of Adobe Photoshop. So our dimension size for this is going to be File, New, and we're going to choose 1920 by 1080 at a 300 resolution, just because I like to size my text at a certain kind of thing. That's why I have my resolution at 300. You can be at 72, it's okay. And from here, we are going to basically go ahead and work on our first sort of base element, which is the background, okay? Now, the current trend in the gaming thumbnails, and it for like a long time still, has been, of course, the use cases of using either a very blue sky or a very green field, or a combination of both, okay? There's a bunch of little outliers. You can use solid colors, you can use specific things that like have to do about telling the story of the video itself, of course. But for general thumbnails, more or less, you can just basically use a sky from the game itself that of course has a lot of blue in it, or some greenery, or you can just input a regular real life sky in there. So for me, a bit of a Google might look like Fortnite sky background. I'll go ahead and press OK, go to images, and I can just look at any of these little fun sky backgrounds and go from there, right? Or you can just type in Fortnite background, but of course you need to make sure it's a good enough quality. So insert random self plug. I personally coded this, but basically you see this little sizes thing here. You click on this right here, you do larger than 2 megapixels, and it should find you a nice, good, high quality image when you click on it. About 2,000 to 3,000 pixels, which is pretty good. This is not, of course, from a game, but even this is good enough too. But I'm gonna actually center my, of course, thumbnail and title, I guess, around a Fortnite themed idea. So that's what I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use a specific Fortnite one. I went ahead and deleted sky and did Fortnite grass, and this also looks pretty cool here over here. Please do not skimp out on your backgrounds. You only really probably need like 3 to 5 different backgrounds, and then from there it can just be a consistency because branding. But also this one right here is really nice, actually. I might use this guy. Depending on your aesthetic, I would say personally what I would recommend you is to not add too many noise to your background, or too much noise to your background. Noise can include quite literally anything. In my opinion, noise in this example, these trees, this shadow, this little cone thing, this wood, this tree here, and maybe even some of these clouds might be too much. But that's what I mean by noise. Different objects are in the background. And the background should be a very stationary, not necessarily blank, but also not heavily textured, okay? So a lot more noise or objects will basically have the person confused when they look at it immediately. I think if I find a nice little spot where this thumbnail looks, or this background looks good, let's say like this part right here, right? I'm gonna go ahead, use a lasso tool. So I can press L on my keyboard, or just use the lasso tool, which is right over here. I'm gonna circle this tree pretty close, right? And also the actual shadow as well. And then after I do that, I can right click and I can just use generative fill. It's probably it's one of the newer ideas to kind of remove your background. You don't have to put anything in here. You could type in remove. You press generate and sort of Photoshop immediately thinks that you want to remove the thing. So you don't have to type in the word remove. And just like that, it removes the tree. And I also have 3 variations just in case, you know, you wanted something else. That's why generative fill is kind of nice. So I'm gonna do that for all these trees here and even the cone. Now that I am here, you can see that our background now is a lot more simple. And I think it's incredibly important to do this for your actual image. I'm gonna keep this one here just for the sake of it, making sure it makes it look like Fortnite in a little bit. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna combine all of these images together. You can press Control, Alt, Shift, and E, and it'll merge all of our layers, or basically your exact photo or picture in your canvas currently, into one layer, as you can see right here. And I'm gonna right click, convert to a smart object, And then I'll go ahead now and go to filter, camera raw filter, and we're gonna brighten this background up and make it like so visible to every kid out there in the universe who types in and gets somewhere close to your title and you want to make sure it pops. You gotta make sure the color correction is good, okay? I'm gonna click on this little square down here. This is basically gonna shift between a before and after photo. And the first two things I'm gonna do immediately is I'm actually gonna throw up my texture a little bit to like, you know, plus 10 to 20. Also my detail sharpening, probably like plus 35 or so. If I zoom in for a second, you can kind of see it just makes the background look a little bit more crisp. When the actual thumbnail is scaled back down to like that ratio that's visible on just mobile and like your desktop, you're not gonna really notice it too much. So it's okay to kind of go a little crazy with the sharpen. But after the sharpen, we want to focus our efforts over at color mixer and saturation, which is this tab right here. And then I'm going to take my blues and my aquas and throw these guys really, really far up. And as you can see, we immediately get a very, very like a nicer pop of color. Now you can also go to luminance, and what luminance is basically is the brightness or the shadow or the, it's like the brightness control per se. So if I lowered my blue luminance, you can see the brightness of the sky goes down as I lower it down. And so it makes the color pop just a tiny bit more. Same thing with the aquas, I think, as well. And actually for the greens, I'm not gonna actually lower this down. As you can see, it kind of kills the sky a little bit or like kills the grass. But instead, if I put this up, now we're getting somewhere. Now, for a final touch, I might go into curves, okay? And I might give myself a nice little small S curve just for a little bit of contrast work. More or less, it's pretty much good. But the difference from here to here, pretty valid, and I enjoy it, and this is gonna be our new background, okay? Now what I'll go ahead and do is I'll take in my photo that I took of myself just now, and I'll drag this thing right in here, and I'm gonna size this thing down for a second so I can get myself a nice little cutout, okay, first. So basically, to go ahead and cut this thing out, I'm gonna press W on my keyboard, which gives me the quick selection tool, which then up here gives me the option to press select subject. If your photo is a good photo, it'll select whatever is in frame or focus, excuse me. It'll capture hopefully majority of what you needed it to capture. So for me, it got rid of this left-hand side, which I'm glad because I don't really need the chair in my photo, but it didn't capture on this side. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press Q on my keyboard. I will jump into this thing called quick mask mode, okay? If I use my brush now, what you'll notice is that when I'm coloring in with my brush currently, it's on white. If I switch it to black with this little knob right here, it'll actually fill it back in. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I fill in exactly where I wanna make sure the rest of it cuts out. So red is basically being cut out. Whatever is not in red will be stayed when you actually go ahead and use a layer mask to cut it out. And I think this is pretty much good. So I can press Q on my keyboard just like so, go over here to my layer mask and click on it, and it'll give me a nice little cutout of myself, which is perfect. Now, noise. I do have energy on my chest, so that is added texture and added noise and probably takes your attention away from my face or my background. So I'm gonna go ahead as well, click into this little smart object page, and I'm gonna use my lasso tool right here, or actually not even lasso, I'll just use patch tool for this. It's pretty simple. Patch tool, I highlight this energy logo signature, and yes, with the patch tool, all I'll have to do is click on the patch where I just selected and move it to a place where it's not, and I'll just get rid of it just like so, and I can just press Control S to save it since I do have I am in a smart object, and I'm good to go. So I'll scale this thing now. Here is pretty good. More or less, this photo is pretty good, right? But I want to give you guys a few tips. On the photo, if we go to filter, camera raw filter, we're gonna quickly just set ourselves up with a nice little color correction. So I'll click this little square down here, and the first things I might do as well again is use texture a little bit, right? A little bit of detail sharpening as well, just like so, maybe even a lot more, something a little aggressive. I think this is pretty good. Now I'll go into where it says light, and I'll take my shadows, throw it up a little bit. My whites, I'll throw it up a little bit as well. My black, I will lower this down. My exposure, I might bring this up a little bit as well. Tiny bit of contrast, and really all I am aiming for is trying to brighten up my face, brighten up any of like a little bit of texture or folds in my clothes, just for like the sake of like showing that it's a person and not like a floating head, right? So that looks pretty good here. I think we can just add ourselves a little S curve. Why not? You can never go wrong with one. And I will say my face is a little bit red, I guess, as well. So I might go into where it says color mixer, go to my saturation, go to my red, throw this down, or I guess I'm more or less orange. And I think that right there looks pretty good. Look at that. Simple. So the other part that I want to notice or show you guys, right? If I go to the little adjustments tab down here and go to where it says hue and saturation, okay? It'll of course come with a layer mask as well, already on. So what basically means if I lower this down saturation to like -100, you can tell it's already active. So I'm gonna click on my thumbnail. I'm gonna press Control backspace, or no, well, it depends. Wherever your white is or your black is. If you never knew when you click on a layer mask, it automatically changes the colors from black and white. So it's either control backspace or alt backspace in order for you to get this sort of layer mask in black, okay? If you're like not into Photoshop, this might be a little sketch for you right now, but all I did was turn off the layer mask, filling it in completely with black. And I'm gonna go over here and with white, and I did this on purpose, with white, you can see, if you look right here, the icon will be kind of updated. You'll see like a little dot there. That's because you erased it. So with a white color, I'm gonna fill back in only around the white part of the eye. So I do have it at, of course, -100 saturation just for you guys to see it. But this basically is what I'm asking for you guys to do, just like so. Of course, on the other side. And now that we've done this, I'm gonna go back into hue and saturation, and I'm actually not gonna use, of course, -100 saturation. I'm gonna lower this down and maybe like -10. But all I really wanna focus on necessarily is the lightness. If I just wanna bring this up until it looks as natural as possible. You can see this, it looks okay. You zoom in a little bit more, you might notice that these hard edges are not great. So I might just say to myself, the brush, make it 0 hardness this time, and go around the edges with a black to erase a little bit. That way it's not like super noticeable. This is obviously a no-no, but this right here, arguably okay. And you can see the difference that we're kind of doing here. It's very, very subtle, but you can either pay attention to my left side on my actual canvas or my navigator up here, which is kind of like my thumbnail navigator. You can turn this on, by the way, by going to window, navigator. You can just add the window and it's kind of floating. You can just kind of throw it right up in here until you get that blue bar, let go, navigator, right? This is sort of like a size equivalent that you'll see on YouTube, the actual like, you know, feed, right? If I turn it on and off, it's not completely needed or necessary because I do have some pretty like white, whatever it's called in your eye. It just makes my eyes pop a lot more. And basically, if you didn't know the idea of emotion, your eyes tell more or less the story. So making sure your eyes are very crystal clear in the thumbnail is incredibly important. Last but not least, my teeth are not the most white in the universe. So I'm gonna do the same exact thing with another hue and saturation, and we're gonna fix these teeth too, okay? I can't tell you how many creators, and I won't name names, in the past where I had to do this every time, so it's like embedded in my brain. I think it's also a good look though too at the same time. This is where we were, pretty blurry image. You can't really focus on the face, you can't really see it. If I turn it on, you can see that face is now nice and pop, and it just makes a lot more sense and just looks good. Notice the size of my photo, right? We're not in the corner like this. It just simply isn't big enough for you to notice your face immediately. You wanna make sure that you make your photo big enough. I would even say your head is necessarily 80% from top to bottom. And if you were wondering why I wore a black shirt, well, let me show you guys something really quick, okay? If I use quick selection tool, which is W on my keyboard, and I'm gonna quickly select the black of my shirt, don't forget, you can press Q on your keyboard, use a brush, and fix it like this the way you need to. And now I can go to my adjustments tab down here, right? And go to gradient map, and I'm gonna make my left color black, and then my right color, let's just say if you wanna have a green shirt, we'll make this green for now. And the one that I made black, I just did this for the sense of the preset per se, but the black one on the left hand side, you can change this now color to the same green necessarily, but make sure you maintain it to be like not up here green, because that's just obvious. You can't really get any curves or shadows and whatnot. So you have to make sure your sort of like green is a darker shade, and the one on the right hand side has all that light that you need, right? And then click again. You can bring this new one in a little further and start playing with this midpoint between the farthest left and then now this new middle anchor. So I'm gonna click on this little midpoint here and bring this in a little bit, see if I can get more shadow work. And it's kind of like a trial and error thing. So I say this looks pretty good, but of course, if your gradient is not like done the right way and only selecting on the shirt, it's very, very noticeable. So you want to make sure that you get most of that shirt. Maybe you have to go a little over it, which is okay, I guess. So this to me, my shirt looks pretty green. It looks somewhat realistic, and I can always just change around this color scheme now. So if I want a, let's say an orange shirt, there's now my orange, right? So some colors do work better than others, but also if I was wearing a colored t-shirt, it might be a little bit easier as well to mess with. The only thing that's really left that's not a supporting element is of course the text. Now, let's just say the title of this video is we're talking about a Fortnite update, okay? So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna just type in the word update first, but I think what I'll do is I'll have like update like this and then new. The usuals for like any gaming related fonts are called Burbank. So if you were to type in Burbank big condensed in Google, you'll get it for free because this is a free font. And then another really good free one is Anton regular. So A-N-T-O-N, put that into Google as well. This is also a good one. It's a little bit more simple still, but it has a tiny bit of like character to it. You can see the kerning here. Kerning is the letter spacing. So this spacing here is a little kind of separated. I like to go ahead and just take this under my characters table. So window, character, and take the VA spacing here, which is this one right here. Put this down a little bit to like -40 or -30 is my sweet spot. I mean, there's fonts called PyPy. If you look at the word new, PyPy is a really nice one. It's also free. But outside of that, maybe Tandil, right? I'll put all these fonts description down below for you guys to actually make it a little bit easier. But those 3 fonts probably like my go-tos for general gaming. Burbank for Fortnite, and PyPy is also good for general gaming. But this one right here is called Anton. This is just very, very, very general. And I might twist it a little bit and add both these 2 fonts to it. Fonts and type is also a character that in which you can kind of brand. So if you use a same font every time, it's a tiny bit different from all other people's fonts out there that are using for thumbnails in specific, it can help you stand out on the timeline when people subscribe to you and want to find your videos again faster. So that's another thing to keep in mind, okay? For the actual typography or the font to stand out, this is just not good enough. But to make this pop, we're gonna go ahead and double click onto the word update to bring up the layer styles. I'm gonna go ahead and just choose my characters table and change the color of my font to like a nice yellow that's not completely yellow. Now I'll double click into it. And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a drop shadow. Okay, now this drop shadow, we're gonna change this color to whatever the color is of the yellow. And then I'm gonna lower this down to get a darker color. Sometimes lowering the actual hue bar over here helps you get a better, darker color. Take my spread, put it all the way up to 100. The angle's at 90. And the size here, now that I have my spread all the way at 100, when I put my size up, it'll actually spread past the actual font. And this to me looks pretty good, just like so. I'll go to like 25 or so. And now that I have that, I'll go into inner shadow and I'll click on my choke here, put it down to 0. Size, I'll put it down to 0. And my distance is the only thing I want to have at like 4 or 5. Press the color, make it the same color as this before, but make it a nice lighter color than the actual original color. And then last but not least, we can add another drop shadow if necessary. We'll just go ahead and just choose and kind of recreate the drop shadow color, but I'm gonna make it a little bit more darker this time, right, than my original drop shadow color. And if I have my spread at 100%, if I have my distance further than here, so my distance over here is at 6, so as long as I have it further than 6, it'll start showing. And then my size here needs to be also above whatever the size is over here. So 25, it needs to at least match that same size, so 25. And now this is our layer style. Now for the word new, I'm gonna make this basic as heck, okay? I'm gonna just do like a drop shadow, make this black. I can kind of make it the same color as here, but if I do that, it kind of makes the entire font and typography look too similar. So I'm making it black on purpose here, or even maybe make it even red. It would look good if it was alone, but so I want to kind of mess around with a little bit of color theory here. I might say making this a little bit more red tone, and I can just go ahead and make this color now. Maybe I can make it black and it'll look okay, right? That looks pretty decent. It's almost done. We're gonna add one more thing to this update text, which I'm gonna basically make a new layer, and then I'm gonna clip mask this layer into this update text layer. So that means whatever I put on this layer will be now only on this bottom layer. So I'm gonna click and use my brush, make a nice soft brush, a pretty big, decent size, something probably the same height as the actual type. Choose the same kind of color, right, as before, but of course this again, make it a little bit more towards the white. And I'm gonna click a few times just like so right on the bottom to kind of give this a nice little gradient. If I ever want to change the color though, if I don't like it, I can just double click on the actual new layer and change the color again and see if I can get anything else. Kind of doing this might feel a little bit better to me. We've done background, we've done photos, and we've done just now text, which is pretty much done. The last thing that I have in my 4 basic elements is supporting elements, supporting assets, right? Supporting assets are incredibly important because it just makes your thumbnail look a little less boring. For example, I can take these 2 texts, right? Click on them, I'll click on one, hold control, select the other one, and select multiple at the same time. Press Control T, and I can right click, do skew, take the right hand side, and I'll just give it a little skew, just like so, right? A little bit of action. I also kind of took away this grading here. I don't know if orange was the play here. Maybe I need to change it to a different color. I think blue looks pretty good. Now from here, I'm actually gonna use something called a thumbnail pack. This is kind of a self plug, but you can also Google probably any of these assets yourself in your own time. And I'll also put the thumbnail pack in the description down below for you guys if you want it. It's pretty much, it's honestly used a lot throughout YouTube. You might, if I open this, you're gonna be like, I've seen that before. You're welcome. Right now, so if I open this thing up, I guess what I kind of want is to make sure this sort of like new update thing looks a little bit more fun and like there's like sparkles or something going on. And I'm wondering if these little lightning things could help me out here. And if I drag this in, drop this down, I kind of put this right around the new update, it just makes it look pretty cool. I kind of enjoyed that now because now I have a little bit more of an emphasis on the new update part, which looks pretty good to me. Of course, you got to have your arrows, and we're kind of just using this arrow to say, hey, there's a new update. If you just if you couldn't read. In the world of gaming, there's a lot of young individuals out there, and if you're watching this and you're young, sorry for what I'm about to say, but these kids are like, you know, they need a little bit of direction. So with this red arrow, I'm gonna just type in a layer style here, or excuse me, put in a layer style here and do a stroke, just like so. Do on the outside, make it pretty big, but the color, just make it white, right? And the drop shadow, we don't need to spread on this, but just a little bit of distance and a little bit of size. I say like 10 and 10 is pretty good on black at the angle at 90, just so it kind of pops off the background just a tiny bit. And I think this looks pretty good. So the last thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is on a new layer, I'm gonna use a nice brush here, and I'm gonna use sort of like the darkest kind of color that's here, which right now it's kind of like that sort of like background color around the text. Make my brush pretty big, and I'm just gonna click just like so, and it's gonna be like, why'd you do that? And I'm gonna go ahead and go to where it says a blend mode on normal, and I'm gonna change my blend mode from normal to linear dodge add. And just like so, you can see this little glow here just adds a little bit of glow, a little bit of emphasis on the word update again. And now with all this being said, if I were to just drag this thing up here, this is where we were before, this is where we are after, and you can see breaking it down to those four easy steps, very long, of course. It doesn't take 10 minutes to make a thumbnail sometimes. But with breaking it down with the actual background, photo, typography, and then sort of supporting assets, you're gonna do yourself a huge favor in making it as simple for you guys as possible. So with that, my thumbnail is not really generated towards a specific title or a challenge or a theme. It's of course incredibly important, but this is the base and how you will want to go about it. And hopefully this comes your one-stop shop to, I need to make a thumbnail. I don't know how to do it, but I need to do it myself. This video is here for you at all times. Old times. Why'd I do it? God, I was almost one take. With that being said, I love you guys so very much. Don't forget to check out the fonts in the description down below, if I remember. Don't forget to check out the thumbnail pack or the everything pack in the description down below. And also don't forget to leave a like or a comment and all that good stuff. So Cesso HQ out. And then finally, do not forget to keep smiling, stay positive, and stay freaking productive, guys. Later, much love, peace, enjoy your week, happy holidays, and yeah, see you guys soon.